The WCW destroyed legends, not because these wrestlers lacked talent, but because WCW had no idea how to use them. Turner's company took WWE's most proven superstars and completely wasted their potential through incompetent booking and backstage politics. From athletic big men who could move like cruiserweights to technical perfectionists who never had a bad match, WCW took these proven main eventers and buried them in meaningless feuds. By the end of this video, you'll be asking the same question every wrestling fan has asked for decades. How did WCW mess up this badly with such legendary talent? First up, Big Boss Man.
Big Boss Man was one of the realest characters in wrestling history. Ray Traylor, a real-life prison guard, dominated the 80s and 90s with unforgettable feuds, from handcuffing opponents to dragging Big Show's father's casket at a funeral. However, in 2004, his life would end tragically at just 41 years old. Ray Washington Traylor was born on May 2, 1963, in Marietta, Georgia. Traylor's early life remains shrouded in mystery, a fact that seems fitting for a man who would later become one of wrestling's most intimidating figures. While many wrestlers of his era crafted elaborate backstories about their upbringing, Traylor maintained an iron curtain between his personal and professional lives, taking the rare approach of letting his imposing presence speak for itself. But it was behind the walls of Cobb County Correctional Facility where Traylor's legend truly began to take shape. Standing at a towering 6'7" and weighing a mammoth 330 pounds, he wasn't just another corrections officer, he was a force of nature that commanded respect with merely his presence. Hardened inmates quickly learned that crossing paths with Officer Traylor meant serious business. What's particularly fascinating is that despite later sharing the ring with giants like Andre and Big John Studd, Traylor in 1985, when local wrestling promoters, always on the lookout for legitimate tough guys with size, couldn't help but notice the imposing prison guard. Here was a man who didn't need to pretend to be tough, he lived it daily. After being convinced to give wrestling a shot, Traylor began training while still maintaining his corrections officer position. His natural athleticism, combined with his real-world experience in handling confrontations, made him a quick study in the ring. Soon he was working dates for Knoxville's Continental Championship Wrestling, where he rapidly became one of their most promising prospects. In a bold move that would change his life forever, Traylor hung up his prison guard uniform and dove headfirst into the world of professional wrestling, a decision that would lead him down a path to becoming one of wrestling's most memorable characters. In the cutthroat world of territorial wrestling, few rookies ascended the ranks as quickly as Ray Traylor. On February 3, 1986, barely 8 months after first stepping into a wrestling ring, Traylor found himself challenging for the prestigious NWA Alabama Heavyweight Championship. This wasn't just any title shot. It was a testament to how quickly this former prison guard had mastered the fundamentals of professional wrestling. While he would ultimately fall short against the seasoned champion Robert Soto that night, the match proved to be a career-defining moment for reasons nobody could have predicted. Word of Traylor's exceptional performance spread through the wrestling community like wildfire. Here was a big man who could not only intimidate with his size, but could actually work a compelling match, a rare combination that caught the attention of Jim Crockett Promotions, the crown jewel of Southern wrestling. Operating out of Charlotte, North Carolina, JCP was considered the major leagues of territorial wrestling, second only to the WWF in terms of national prominence. The company had launched the careers of legends like Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, and Ricky Steamboat, and now they had their eyes on the promising rookie from Georgia. What's particularly remarkable about this period is how Traylor's real-life experience as a corrections officer began shaping his in-ring persona. While many wrestlers struggled to find their character, Traylor's authenticity was undeniable. When he locked eyes with an opponent, everyone in the arena could feel the presence of a man who had stared down real-life criminals. This natural intimidation factor, combined with his rapidly improving ring skills, made him an invaluable prospect for Jim Crockett Promotions, setting the stage for the next chapter in his wrestling journey. Every wrestling superstar has an origin story, and Ray Traylor's transformation from enhancement talent to main event player reads like a masterclass in character evolution. During his early days in Jim Crockett Promotions, Traylor paid his dues the old-school way, taking losses to the territory's biggest names. But these weren't just any matches. They were learning experiences against some of the most legendary figures in wrestling history, trading holds with technical wizard Tully Blanchard, surviving battles with the rugged Ivan Koloff, and going toe-to-toe with the tomahawk-chopping Wahoo McDaniel. Each match added another layer to Trailer's rapidly developing skill set. Even encounters with elite tag teams like the Midnight Express and the Road Warriors helped shape his understanding of ring psychology. But it was the eye of wrestling's creative genius, Dusty Rhodes, that saw something special lurking beneath the surface of the former corrections officer. The American Dream had a knack for spotting diamond in the rough, and in Trailer he saw unlimited potential. In a bold move that would change wrestling history, Rhodes pulled Trailer completely off television for 3 months. An eternity in wrestling time. Behind the scenes, they weren't just creating a new character. They were crafting an entirely new force of nature in professional wrestling. The result would be Big Bubba Rogers, a character that would make audiences forget Ray Trailer had ever been a jobber. When Big Bubba Rogers emerged on the May 31st episode of Worldwide, the transformation was nothing short of remarkable. Gone was the enhancement talent taking losses. In his place stood an immovable mountain of a man, silently stalking at the side of the flamboyant Jim Cornette. This wasn't just another bodyguard role, it was the birth of a monster heel who would redefine what it meant to be intimidating in professional wrestling. The timing couldn't have been better, as Cornette and his Midnight Express were embroiled in a heated rivalry with Magnum TA and the Road Warriors. Each week, Big Bubba's presence grew more menacing as he systematically destroyed opponent after opponent, building a reputation as an unstoppable force that even the most established stars feared to face. His silent demeanor made him even more threatening, while other wrestlers needed to talk tough. Big Bubba's mere presence was enough to send shivers through the crowd. In the high-stakes world of 1980s wrestling, few feuds captured audience attention, quite like the intense rivalry between Big Bubba Rogers and Dusty Rhodes. The bunkhouse Stampede matches, brutal, no-holds-barred affairs where anything went, became the perfect showcase for both men's contrasting styles. Rhodes, the charismatic veteran with years of wars under his belt, found himself matched against a younger, more powerful opponent who could match his intensity, blow for blow. The shocking part wasn't just that Bubba could hang with the Dream, it was that he was winning just as many matches as he was losing. As tensions escalated and neither man could claim true superiority, the wrestling world buzzed with anticipation for what would become one of the most memorable cage matches in NWA history. The steel structure would serve as the ultimate proving ground, where Big Bubba's meteoric rise would be tested against the established dominance of the American Dream. While Rhodes ultimately emerged victorious, the feud had accomplished something remarkable. It had transformed Big Bubba from Jim Cornette's imposing bodyguard into a legitimate main event threat in his own right. The momentum from the Rhodes feud catapulted Bubba into an even more violent program with rugged Ron Garvin, a hard-hitting veteran known for his devastating knockout punch. Their rivalry culminated at Starrcade 1986, the NWA's biggest event of the year, in a Louisville street fight that pushed both men to their absolute limits. In front of a packed house, Bubba showcased not just his raw power, but his mastery of brawling psychology, systematically breaking down the smaller Garvin in a match that had fans believing every brutal moment. The decisive victory proved what many had begun to suspect. Big Bubba Rogers wasn't just a flash in the pan. He was becoming one of wrestling's most formidable forces. The former corrections officer had not only found his calling, but was excelling at it in ways few could have predicted. In the ever-shifting landscape of 1980s wrestling territories, the Universal Wrestling Federation emerged as a fresh battleground for ambitious competitors. When Jim Crockett acquired the promotion, he knew exactly who to send in as his conquering force: Big Bubba Rogers. On April 18, 1987, Bubba made an immediate impact that sent shockwaves through the UWF, demolishing not one but two men in a handicap match against Mike Reed and the Glassman. This wasn't just a debut, it was a statement of dominance. But it was the following night that would etch Bubba's name into UWF history. Challenging the seemingly unstoppable one-man gang for the UWF Heavyweight Championship, Bubba proved that his rapid rise in wrestling was no fluke. In a clash of titans that had the crowd on the edge of their seats, Bubba dethroned Gang to capture his first world championship, a moment that marked his official arrival as a main event player in professional wrestling. The victory was made even sweeter by its decisiveness, proving that the former corrections officer could hang with anyone in the business. The championship reign that followed showcased a new dimension to Big Bubba's character when he aligned himself with the sinister General Skandor Akbar and his feared Devastation Inc. and stable. Under Akbar's guidance, Bubba's reign of terror extended through 3 brutal months of championship defenses. He turned back challenges from technical master Barry Windham, the charismatic Michael Hayes, and the powerful Steve Cox, each victory adding to his growing legend. However, even the mightiest reigns must end, and Bubba's came to a close on July 11th at the hands of Dr. Death Steve Williams, a former football player turned wrestler whose legitimate toughness matched Bubba's own imposing presence. The match itself was a war of attrition that proved Bubba could deliver main event caliber performances against any style of opponent. In the summer of 1987, the wrestling world witnessed one of the most star-studded matches ever assembled when Big Bubba Rogers found himself sharing the ring with wrestling royalty. The War Games, dubbed the Match Beyond, represented the pinnacle of NWA's team warfare, and Bubba's inclusion alongside the legendary Four Horsemen spoke volumes about his rising status. Trading blows with the face-painted Road Warriors and the Russian powerhouse Nikita Koloff inside the dual-cage structure, Bubba proved he belonged among wrestling's elite, even in defeat. But the former corrections officer wasn't content to rest on his laurels after mixing it up with wrestling's top stars. With his sights set on tag team gold, Bubba embarked on an ambitious quest to capture the UWF Tag Team Championships. Like a chess master trying different strategies, he cycled through an intriguing roster of partners, each bringing their own unique strengths to the table. The mysterious Angel of Death added an element of supernatural intimidation, while the ruthless Terminator brought raw power to complement Bubba's own. Even the rough-and-tumble Black Bart seemed like a perfect match for Bubba's brawling style. Yet despite these formidable partnerships and numerous attempts at the gold, the championships remained frustratingly out of reach. When a championship slips through your fingers, some wrestlers spiral into obscurity, but Big Bubba Rogers wasn't just any wrestler. His repeated attempts to reclaim the UWF World title from Dr. Death Steve Williams became a story of mounting frustration, each loss adding another layer to his increasingly desperate pursuit. Despite bringing new strategies and even more intensity to each match, the championship remained tantalizingly out of reach. By 1988, it became clear to the former corrections officer that sometimes the boldest move is knowing when to walk away. The wrestling world of 1988 offered plenty of options for a performer of Bubba's caliber, but none held more intrigue than the highly respected rings of All Japan Pro Wrestling. On March 26th, Japanese fans got their first taste of Big Bubba's imposing presence during the prestigious Champion Carnival Tour. His debut couldn't have been more high-profile, partnering with the legendary Bruiser Brody, a man whose wild, brawling style had already become mythical in Japan. Their opponents that night were equally impressive: the beloved Japanese icon Jumbo Tsuruta and the mammoth John Tenta, who would later terrorize the WWF as Earthquake. The match itself wrote a fascinating chapter in wrestling history, 2 American monsters teaming up in a foreign land against a beloved national hero and a fellow Gaijin powerhouse. The bout's conclusion, a double countout draw, served to protect everyone involved while establishing Bubba as a credible threat in the highly competitive Japanese wrestling scene. More importantly, it showed that Bubba could adapt his style to the more hard-hitting, realistic approach favored by Japanese audiences. Standing toe-to-toe with legends like Brody and Tsuruta proved that his skills translated across any border or wrestling style. The partnership between Big Bubba Rogers and Bruiser Brody became one of the most fearsome Gaijin duos to grace All Japan's rings in early 1988. Their path of destruction ran through a who's who of Japanese wrestling royalty, from the innovative high-flying of Tiger Mask to the stoic presence of Giant Baba himself. Perhaps most memorable were the encounters with Genichiro Tenryu, whose stiff strikes and intense style meshed perfectly with Bubba's power-based offense. Each match added new dimensions to Bubba's repertoire as he absorbed the hard-hitting Japanese style into his own intimidating arsenal. His final bout with Jumbo Tsuruta on April 22nd served as a fitting farewell to a tour that had transformed him into an even more complete performer. With renewed confidence and an expanded moveset, Trailer set his sights on the biggest prize in professional wrestling, the World Wrestling Federation. The timing couldn't have been more perfect or more challenging. The WWF of 1988 was experiencing unprecedented mainstream success, riding the wave of Hulkamania into popular culture like never before. This wasn't just wrestling anymore, it was sports entertainment on a global scale. While Hulk Hogan's 24-inch pythons were captivating audiences worldwide, the intensity of Randy Savage's character work was redefining what a wrestling personality could be. The Ultimate Warrior was bringing an energy never before seen in professional wrestling, and merchandise was flying off the shelves at record pace. Breaking into this supercharged atmosphere would require something special, a character that could stand out in a landscape already populated by larger-than-life personalities. Behind the scenes of professional wrestling, some of the most enduring characters are born from reality. When Vince McMahon signed Ray Traylor in June 1988, he saw more than just another big man. He recognized the untapped potential in Traylor's real-life background. The Big Boss Man character wasn't just another wrestling gimmick, it was a masterclass in taking someone's authentic experience and amplifying it for maximum impact. Complete with a police officer's uniform, handcuffs, and his infamous nightstick, Traylor didn't have to pretend. He knew exactly how to carry himself with the authority of a real law enforcement officer. Under the guidance of the flamboyant manager Slick, the jive soul bro whose smooth-talking style provided the perfect contrast to Boss Man's intimidating silence, the character took off immediately. Their partnership created an unforgettable dynamic. Slick would talk the talk, while Boss Man walked the walk with devastating efficiency. The formula was simple but effective. Boss Man would dominate his opponents with his impressive power moves, but it was what came after the matches that really got the crowd's blood boiling. The sight of him handcuffing fallen opponents to the ropes before unleashing his nightstick became one of wrestling's most memorable heel tactics of the era. What made the Big Boss Man character particularly compelling was how Traylor inhabited it completely. There was no need for over-the-top acting or elaborate backstories. His presence alone told the story of a ruthless prison guard who enjoyed inflicting punishment. His ring entrance, complete with police nightstick twirling and authoritative stride, struck fear into opponents and fans alike. The WWE audience quickly learned that when Boss Man's police siren hit, someone was about to experience their own personal version of hard time. Each victory, followed by a post-match assault, served to cement his reputation as one of the company's most fearsome new arrivals. Inside the pressure cooker of late 1980s WWE, rising stars had to make an immediate impact, or risk fading into obscurity. The Big Boss Man didn't just rise to the occasion, he kicked down the door of superstardom. After dispatching Koko B. Ware at SummerSlam's debut event Angle, it was a declaration that a new threat to Hulkamania had arrived. The sight of the massive former corrections officer laying waste to wrestling's biggest star sent shockwaves through the industry. The formation of the Twin Towers with Akeem marked one of wrestling's most intriguing partnerships. The one-man gang's transformation into the African Dream. Akeem might have seemed bizarre on paper, but paired with Boss Man's no-nonsense approach, they became an unstoppable force. Together, they presented a unique challenge to the seemingly unbreakable alliance of Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, the Mega Powers. Each confrontation between these four men drew massive crowds and ratings, proving that Boss Man had successfully jumped from mid-card talent to main event player in record time. The main event on February 3, 1989, wasn't just another match. It was a pivotal moment in wrestling history that would reshape WWE's landscape. While the Twin Towers may have come up short in the actual bout, the real story unfolded in its aftermath as the Mega Powers finally imploded, with Savage's jealousy and paranoia reaching its breaking point. That Boss Man and Akeem were chosen as the catalysts for such a monumental shift in WWE storylines spoke volumes about their status within the company. Well placed. The Big Boss Man's rise from impressive newcomer to main event player was cemented in the spring of 1989. When the Twin Towers clashed with the Rockers at proved no match for the sheer power and ruthless tactics of Boss Man and Akeem, setting the stage for even bigger challenges ahead. The pursuit of tag team gold against Demolition became one of WWE's hottest programs of 1989. The collision of these two powerhouse teams created a series of brutal encounters that had audiences on the edge of their seats. Axe and Smash's face paint and spiked leather stood in stark contrast to the Twin Towers prison guard and African Dream personas. But their matches were marked by an equally intense level of physicality. Each title match brought them tantalizingly close to championship glory, though the belts would ultimately remain just out of reach. But it was the steel cage matches against Hulk Hogan that truly showcased Bossman's evolution as a performer. These brutal encounters across the country became the stuff of legend, culminating in their televised war on Saturday night's main event on May 27th. The sight of two massive athletes battling atop the blue steel cage created an unforgettable moment when Hogan managed to superplex the 330-pound Bossman from the summit. While Bossman may have lost the match, the series proved he could not only hang with wrestling's biggest star, but deliver main event caliber performances that had fans believing in every near fall. That superplex spot, in particular, demonstrated both his athleticism and his willingness to take spectacular risks to entertain the crowd. Sometimes the most memorable moments in wrestling come from the simplest acts of defiance. When the $1 Million Man tried to buy the Big Boss Man's services with cold hard cash, offering him a payoff to kidnap Jake Roberts' python Damien, nobody expected the hardened prison guard to show a conscience. But that February 1990 moment revealed a different side to the man from Cobb County. Beneath the tough exterior beat the heart of someone who lived by a code, even if it wasn't always apparent. The transformation from feared heel to beloved hero was immediate and electric. Bossman's new entrance theme became an instant fan favorite, with its bluesy rhythm and memorable lyrics about serving hard time to wrongdoers. The message was clear: the same intensity that made him a dreaded villain would now be directed at those who broke the rules. This new direction meant win that showed this was a new chapter in his career. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Bossman's face turn was how naturally he slipped into the role of justice-seeking hero. The same man who had terrorized Hulk Hogan just months before was now standing firmly in his corner at SummerSlam 1990, helping the Hulkster deal with the massive threat of earthquake. By the time Survivor Series rolled around that November, Bossman had become an integral part of Hogan's team of heroes. Standing alongside Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Tugboat, he helped lead their squad to victory over a formidable team of villains, including Earthquake, Dino Bravo, the Barbarian, and Haku. The former corrections officer had completed his transformation from feared enforcer to respected defender of law and order, proving that sometimes the best heroes are forged from former villains. The start of 1991 saw the Big Boss Man settling into his role as one of WWE's most popular heroes, taking direct aim at Bobby the Brain Heenan's collection of villains. His victories over the Barbarian at the Royal Rumble and Mr. Perfect at WrestleMania 7 weren't just wins. They were statements that the former heel had become one of the company's most reliable good guys. Each triumph further cemented his transformation from feared enforcer to beloved defender of justice. The SummerSlam 91 program with the Mountie created one of wrestling's most unique storylines, a battle between law enforcement officers gone wrong. While Bossman represented honor and justice, the Mountie was his corrupt counterpart, would spend a night in a real jail cell. The sight of the Mountie being led away in handcuffs after his defeat became one of wrestling's most memorable moments, made even more satisfying by actual footage of the Canadian villain spending the night behind bars in a New York City jail. But it was the arrival of Nails that brought Bossman's past rushing back to confront him. The imposing ex-convict, clad in prison orange, emerged with a chilling accusation that Bossman had brutally abused him during his time as a corrections officer in Cobb County. What made this feud particularly compelling was how it forced fans to question their hero's past. While Bossman had become a fan favorite, Nails' accusations added a layer of moral complexity to the character that few wrestling storylines of the era dared to explore. The intensity of their confrontations felt personal in a way that transcended typical wrestling rivalries. This wasn't about championships or pride, but about alleged past sins coming back to haunt a reformed man. A nightstick dangling above the ring became the ultimate symbol of justice in Bossman's heated rivalry with Nails. The Survivor Series showdown wasn't just another gimmick match, it represented Bossman's chance to prove that his reformation was genuine. When he grabbed that nightstick first and used it to secure victory, it wasn't just a win. It was vindication against the accusations that had haunted him throughout the feud. But the wrestling business can be as unforgiving as any prison yard. As 1993 approached, Vince McMahon's vision for WWE began shifting toward younger talent, and even established stars like Bossman found themselves in unfamiliar territory. The man who had once gone toe-to-toe with Hulk Hogan now found himself tasked with making newcomers look strong. Whether it was putting over the flashy Razor Ramon, the mammoth Yokozuna, or the agile Bam Bam Bigelow, Bossman's role had fundamentally changed from main event player to skilled veteran helping to build the next generation. Rather than accept this diminished position, Trailer made the bold decision to return to Japan when his WWE contract expired in 1993. Despite no longer having rights to the Big Boss Man character, he found a creative solution, returning to his Big Bubba persona while still sporting his iconic prison guard attire. This hybrid presentation offered Japanese fans something familiar yet different, allowing him to capitalize on his WWE fame while writing a new chapter in his career. All Japan Pro Wrestling, with its hard-hitting style and respect for veteran performers, provided the perfect environment for Trailer to reinvent himself once again. The wrestling rings of Japan once again became Big Bubba's proving ground as he found himself regularly paired with some of Gaijin Wrestling's biggest names. The partnerships with Stan Hansen and Dr. Death Steve Williams in particular produced some memorable tag team warfare, while his alliance with Kendall Windham showed his ability to mentor younger talent. Yet it was his singles clash with the legendary Kenta Kobashi that truly demonstrated Bubba's versatility, proving that the former corrections officer could hang with the best pure wrestlers in the world. Late 1993 brought a fascinating twist to Trailer's career trajectory. While many expected him to return to the WWF, where he'd made his biggest impact, the ongoing federal steroid trial created an unexpected complication. According to Jim Cornette, Trailer made a calculated decision to protect his law enforcement character from any potential controversy surrounding the trial. The solution? Taking his talents to WCW instead, where he emerged as the boss on December 18th's Saturday night broadcast. His victory over Rick Rude that evening marked the beginning of yet another chapter in his career, one that would allow him to maintain his established persona while distancing himself from the turmoil in New York. The decision showed remarkable foresight on Trailer's part. By choosing WCW during WWF's legal troubles, he not only protected his character's integrity, but positioned himself to benefit from the growing competition between the two promotions. For a man who had spent his career enforcing the law, both in and out of the ring, staying clear of potential legal controversy proved to be the smartest move he could make. Just when the boss seemed poised for a major run in WCW, WWE's legal department threw a wrench in the works with their cease and desist letter. The quick pivot to the Guardian Angel character showed Trailer's adaptability, but it was his return to the Big Bubba Rogers persona that truly reignited his career. His victory over Sting at Uncensored 1995 wasn't just another win. It established him as a serious threat in WCW's increasingly competitive landscape. The Dungeon of Doom period might have seemed like a step backward, feuding with his old Japanese rival John Tenta in what many considered one of WCW's more questionable stables. But Bubba's fortunes changed dramatically when the black and white colors of the NWO came calling. Joining wrestling's hottest faction promised to elevate him back to the main event scene, yet the notoriously political group proved to be a short-lived home. His February 1997 ejection from the NWO transformed him into an unlikely fan favorite, as he systematically worked his way through the stable's roster on a mission of revenge. What made his run particularly compelling was the building anticipation for an eventual showdown with Eric Bischoff. The story wrote itself, the former prison guard taking on the corrupt authority figure who had manipulated so many careers. But like many promising storylines in WCW, it never reached its natural conclusion. When April 1998 rolled around and his contract expired, WCW's decision not to re-sign him left that story forever unfinished. With bridges burned in Japan and WCW's door closing behind him, the path led back to the company where he had made his biggest impact. WWE was calling once again. The late 1990s marked professional wrestling's most explosive era, and the Big Boss Man's return couldn't have been better timed. While WCW's rejection might have stung, WWE's Attitude Era provided the perfect canvas for reinventing his character. The company was pushing boundaries nightly, with Mr. McMahon's tyrannical boss character becoming one of television's most compelling villains in his war against Stone Cold Steve Austin. When Boss Man's signature siren hit the speakers on October 12, 1998, the audience witnessed not just a return, but a complete reinvention. Gone was the traditional blue uniform of a corrections officer, replaced by tactical black SWAT gear that reflected the darker edge of the era. This wasn't the same law enforcer who had once stood for justice. This Boss Man was McMahon's personal enforcer, a ruthless mercenary willing to carry out any order, no matter how despicable. The corporation's brutal attack dog had more in common with a military contractor than a prison guard. The genius of this character update lay in how it maintained Boss Man's core identity while adapting it for the era's more complex storytelling. His previous incarnation had been a straightforward hero, but this version explored darker territory, a law enforcer who had been corrupted by power and money, willing to use his authority to serve the highest bidder. Aligning him with the corporation wasn't just a partnership, it was a statement about authority figures abusing their power, perfectly fitting the anti-establishment themes that defined the Attitude Era. The evolution of the Big Boss Man's character in the Attitude Era created a fascinating prototype for future enforcer stables. His tactical gear and ruthless methods particularly foreshadowed the Shield's later Hounds of Justice concept. While primarily focused on making Stone Cold's life miserable, Boss Man's run included some notable achievements, capturing the tag team championships with Ken Shamrock and becoming a multiple-time hardcore champion, proving he could adapt to the era's more extreme style. His WrestleMania 15 Hell in a Cell match against The Undertaker represented a career milestone, even if the match itself didn't live up to expectations. The image of Boss Man being hoisted up by The Undertaker's Ministry of Darkness, while controversial, became one of the era's most memorable visuals. It demonstrated just how far wrestling had pushed its boundaries from the more straightforward good versus evil stories of the previous decade. Then came the Al Snow feud, a storyline that perfectly encapsulated the Attitude Era's anything goes mentality. The infamous pepper steak angle, where Boss Man secretly cooked and served Snow's beloved Chihuahua to him, pushed the boundaries of taste, even by Attitude Era standards. This bizarre storyline highlighted how wrestling had moved from simple athletic contests to increasingly outrageous soap opera plots. While the angle is often remembered with a mixture of disbelief and dark humor, it showed Boss Man's ability to commit fully to whatever material he was given, no matter how outlandish. In the pantheon of wrestling's most infamous matches, the Kennel from Hell stands in a league of its own. On paper, it sounded like combining both a steel cage and Hell in a Cell, with supposedly vicious attack dogs patrolling the stage, particularly fitting given the dark turn their feud had taken with the Pepper incident. What unfolded at Unforgiven 1999 instead became an unintentional comedy of errors that no one could have predicted. Rather than the fearsome German shepherds that were promised, the dogs seemed more interested in creating their own entertainment. As Boss Man and Snow attempted to work their serious blood feud, the animals turned the ringside area into their personal playground, marking their territory and attempting to mate while completely ignoring the wrestling match happening above them. The sight of these supposedly menacing guard dogs engaging in natural but decidedly non-threatening behavior created an absurd contrast with the serious tone the wrestlers were trying to maintain. The match stands as a perfect example of wrestling's golden rule: never work with animals or children. What was meant to be a violent climax to a heated feud instead became a cautionary tale about the risks of overly elaborate match stipulations. The bout has since gained legendary status among wrestling fans, though perhaps not for the reasons WWE originally intended. Even decades later, the Kennel from Hell match serves as a reminder that sometimes wrestling's most memorable moments come from things going spectacularly wrong rather than right. The Big Boss Man's feud with The Big Show pushed the boundaries of wrestling's theatrical absurdity in ways that even the Attitude Era rarely dared. What started as a simple championship rivalry transformed into something that would feel more at home in a dark comedy than a wrestling ring. The storyline began with the manufactured death of Big Show's father, but it was Boss Man's cartoonishly villainous response that turned it into wrestling infamy. His cruel poetry readings were straight out of a comic book supervillain's playbook, but nothing could prepare audiences for the infamous funeral scene. The sight of Boss Man's police car dragging away a coffin while a crying Big Show rode it like a macabre surfboard created one of wrestling's most surreal moments. What could have been deeply offensive instead landed squarely in the realm of the absurd, like a wrestling version of a Monty Python sketch. The image of Big Show sliding down the street on his father's casket, while Boss Man cackled maniacally perfectly captured. Boss Man's defeat at the hands of Big Show provided a satisfying conclusion for the Giant, but the match itself could never live up to the outrageous build. The entire feud stands as a testament to Boss Man's ability to commit fully to even the most outlandish storylines, transforming what could have been tasteless tragedy into memorable, if bizarre, entertainment. When wrestling fans think of unlikely tag teams, the Boss Man and Prince Albert partnership rarely comes to mind, yet their brief run in early 2000 proved surprisingly entertaining. Their feud with the odd trio of Test and legendary women's wrestlers, the fabulous Moolah and Mae Young, captured the anything-goes spirit of the era, even if their eventual implosion after losing to the Hardys felt somewhat inevitable. But it was Boss Man's mentorship of Bull Buchanan that truly showcased his veteran leadership. The pairing made perfect sense. Buchanan's military background complemented Boss Man's law enforcement persona, creating a duo that felt both natural and imposing. Their victory at WrestleMania 2000 over The Godfather and D'Lo Brown wasn't just another match on a stacked card. It represented Boss Man passing the torch to a younger generation. Following this up with a win over the notorious Acolytes Protection Agency at Backlash proved this wasn't just a one-off success. The partnership highlighted a new dimension to Boss Man's character, that of the seasoned veteran taking a promising rookie under his wing. While his previous alliances had often been partnerships of convenience or necessity, his work with Buchanan showed a more nuanced side of his persona. After years of being both hero and villain, Boss Man was now adding mentor to his resume, proving that even in the latter stages of his WWE run, he could still find fresh ways to evolve his character. After his successful mentorship of Bull Buchanan, the Big Boss Man's career entered its twilight phase in a way that's all too familiar in professional wrestling. The man who had once headlined against Hulk Hogan found himself relegated to WWE's secondary shows, with Sunday Night Heat and Jacked becoming his new stomping grounds. It was a far cry from the days of main eventing Saturday night's main event, but Boss Man brought the same intensity to these matches that he had throughout his career. His brief return to prominence on SmackDown in December 2001 proved to be more of a swan song than a comeback. While sharing the ring with megastars like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin might have seemed like a return to form, the reality was different. He was being used to build credibility for their upcoming championship matches with Chris Jericho. The veteran performer understood his role, making his opponents look strong while maintaining enough credibility to make the victories meaningful. It's worth noting that even in this position, Boss Man's presence carried weight. His reputation and history meant that a win over him still meant something, even if he wasn't the unstoppable force he'd once been. The final chapter of Big Boss Man's WWE career played out far from the spotlight that had defined his greatest moments. The B-shows became his domain once again, but even there, he maintained the professionalism and work ethic that had characterized his entire career. There was no bitterness or decline in effort, just a veteran performer doing what he'd always done, working hard and helping others improve. When his WWE contract finally expired in 2003, Trailer proved he still had the passion for wrestling by making one last journey to Japan. The International Wrestling Association of Japan provided a fitting final stage for his career. The country that had helped shape him during his earlier tours with All Japan now welcomed back the seasoned veteran for a handful of matches. The Japanese audience's respect for wrestling tradition and appreciation for hard-hitting action made it the perfect place for Traylor to write the final pages of his in-ring story. The wrestling world was stunned on September 22, 2004, when news broke of Ray Traylor's passing from a heart attack at the devastatingly young age of 41. For a man who had dominated the wrestling landscape with his imposing presence and incredible athleticism, his sudden departure felt particularly cruel. His death added another name to the tragically long list of wrestlers from his era who left us far too soon, highlighting the harsh physical toll the business often takes on its performers. In the years since his passing, fans and wrestling media alike have often speculated about why Boss Man never reached the pinnacle of the industry as world champion. But those who knew the business from the inside tell a different story, one that reveals much about both the era he worked in and his true value to the company. Speaking to Dr. Chris Featherstone on SK Wrestling's Off the Script, former WWE writer Vince Russo shed light on a reality that many fans might not have considered. He revealed something surprising. Despite Boss Man's strong character work, there was never serious discussion about putting the championship on him. The reason? The Attitude Era's roster was almost impossibly stacked. As Russo explained, to even enter the championship conversation, someone would need to leapfrog past 6, 8, or even 10 top-tier superstars. The roster included icons like The Rock, Steve Austin, The Undertaker, Triple H, and Mick Foley, each a drawing power in their own right. And in our opinion, that's what makes Boss Man's story special. He was part of a crucial tradition in wrestling. The 80s and 90s WWF was built on colorful, gimmicked characters who were never intended for the world title picture. These performers, like Boss Man, were essential to the ecosystem of professional wrestling. They provided credible threats, entertaining storylines, and the ability to make stars look even bigger.
Next up, Bam Bam Bigelow. Bam Bam Bigelow was the massive monster who shocked the world by pulling off moves that only cruiserweights were supposed to do. He went from wrestling NFL legend Lawrence Taylor to becoming a real-life hero who suffered severe burns while rescuing 3 children from a fire. On September 1, 1961, Scott Bigelow was born in the coastal town of Asbury Park, New Jersey. Even as a child, everyone could see there was something different about Scott. He was much bigger than other kids his age, and he had natural athletic talents that made him stand out wherever he went. In high school, Bigelow's athletic talents really began to shine. Although he wouldn't end up finishing school, he achieved something remarkable, earning varsity letters in both football and wrestling during just his sophomore year. His wrestling skills were particularly outstanding, and in 1979, he fought his way to 3rd place in the New Jersey State Wrestling Tournament. But his promising athletic career hit a roadblock when doctors discovered a cyst in his lower back. This painful condition forced him to sit out his entire senior wrestling season. As Bigelow entered his late teenage years, he started exploring different ways to show off his natural strength. He became a regular face at arm wrestling tournaments, where his powerful build made him a formidable opponent. However, this period of his life also took some dark turns. His teenage years were marked by numerous run-ins with the law, ranging from relatively minor incidents to serious offenses. The list of charges was lengthy: aggravated assault, attempted kidnapping, drug possession, robbery, and sexual assault. These troubles with the law eventually led to serious consequences. As a teenager, Bigelow spent 9 months locked up at the Albert C. Wagner Youth Correctional Facility, a time that would leave a lasting impact on his life path. After leaving high school without graduating, Bigelow tried his hand at several tough jobs that suited his intimidating size. He worked as a bouncer, a bodyguard, and even a bounty hunter. During his bounty hunting days, he told a wild story about chasing a fugitive in Mexico that went terribly wrong. According to Bigelow, the person he was hunting shot him in the back, and Mexican authorities threw him in jail for 6 months in Mexico City. When he got back to the United States, Bigelow took a hard look at his future. With no high school diploma and a rough past, he made a choice that would change his life forever. As he put it plainly, "There wasn't much else I was qualified for, so he decided to become a professional wrestler." It turned out to be the perfect fit for someone with his unique combination of size and athletic ability. In May 1985, Bigelow took his first steps toward his wrestling career by joining Larry Sharp's Monster Factory Wrestling School in Clementon, New Jersey. This famous training ground was known for turning out some of wrestling's biggest stars. Just a few months later, on August 23, 1985, Bigelow had his very first professional match. It happened at the famous Studio 54 nightclub in New York City, at a show run by well-known wrestling promoter Paul Heyman. By the middle of 1986, Bigelow had moved south to Memphis, Tennessee, where he started wrestling for the Continental Wrestling Association. This is where he got his famous nickname, becoming known as Bam Bam Bigelow. The wrestling promoters knew exactly what to do with someone as big and athletic as Bigelow. They turned him into a monster. He would often fight multiple opponents at once in handicap matches, showing off his incredible strength and power. He became known for breaking the rules, especially by climbing to the top rope and jumping off, something that was illegal in wrestling at that time. These dramatic matches helped build his reputation as one of wrestling's most intimidating new stars. Growing quickly in the wrestling world, Bigelow hit a major milestone on July 28, 1986. In a match called a Battle Royal, where many wrestlers fight at the same time until only one is left standing, Bigelow emerged victorious and won his first big title, the Southern Heavyweight Championship. But his time at the top didn't last long. Just a few weeks later, on September 8th, he lost the belt to Jerry Lawler in a brutal type of match called a Texas Death Match, where wrestlers fight until one can't continue. After losing his title, Bigelow disappeared from the Continental Wrestling Association for a while to heal up. But when he came back, something unexpected happened. He joined forces with Jerry Lawler, the very man who had taken his championship. Together, they became a powerful tag team, picking fights with two other wrestlers named Austin Idol and Tommy Rich. The fans loved these intense matches, which often turned into wild brawls. Near the end of 1986, Bigelow tried something completely different. He moved to Texas to work for World Class Championship Wrestling, where he transformed into a totally new character. Playing on Cold War tensions of the time, he became Crusher Yurov, a scary Russian wrestler who struck fear into American audiences. This new role worked well for him. He won another title called the WCWA Television Championship. His success that year caught people's attention, and the readers of a respected wrestling magazine called the Wrestling Observer Newsletter voted him as the best new wrestler of 1986, giving him their Rookie of the Year award. This was quite an achievement, showing how quickly Bigelow had made his mark in professional wrestling. At the start of 1987, Bigelow's wrestling career took an international turn when he began traveling to Japan. Working for New Japan Pro Wrestling, he became known as Crusher Bam Bam Bigelow. Japanese fans loved his unique mix of size and agility, something they hadn't seen much before in their wrestling rings. In May 1987, Bigelow made the big jump to America's largest wrestling company, the World Wrestling Federation. At first, he only wrestled in matches that weren't shown on TV, called dark matches and house shows. These matches helped him learn the WWF style and get comfortable performing for bigger crowds. When he finally appeared on television, the company created an interesting story around him called The Battle for Bam Bam. 4 of wrestling's most famous heel managers, Jimmy Hart, Johnny Valiant, Mr. Fuji, and Bobby Heenan, all fought over who would get to be Bigelow's manager. Everyone wondered who Bigelow would choose. In September 1987, he surprised everyone by picking Oliver Humperdinck, which made him one of the good guys in wrestling. Bigelow quickly showed why everyone wanted him on their side. In September and October 1987, he won several Battle Royal matches, throwing out multiple wrestlers to claim victory. Then came his first big TV special appearance at a show called Survivor Series. He joined a team of wrestling stars, Don Morocco, the famous Hulk Hogan, Ken Patera, and Paul Orndorff. They faced off against some of wrestling's scariest heels: the massive Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, Butch Reed, One Man Gang, and Rick Rude. Though Bigelow's team lost, he showed he could hang with wrestling's biggest names. By January 1988, Bigelow was regularly wrestling in main event matches. He started a heated rivalry with Ted DiBiase, known as the $1 Million Man. Often, Bigelow would team up with the biggest star in wrestling, Hulk Hogan, to face DiBiase and Andre in exciting matches that had fans packing arenas across the country. In June 1988, Bigelow faced one of the toughest matches of his career against Andre the Giant at Madison Square Garden. The match turned ugly when Andre decided to fight for real instead of following the usual wrestling style. Wrestling star Bret Hart later said Andre had nearly destroyed Bigelow in the ring. After this brutal match, Bigelow didn't stick around. He went straight to the locker room, grabbed his stuff, and left the building without talking to anyone. By July 1988, Bigelow was done with the World Wrestling Federation. His knees were badly hurt from all the wrestling, but that wasn't the only reason he left. Many other wrestlers had grown jealous of how quickly he'd risen to fame. They didn't like that a newcomer was getting so many big matches and opportunities, while they'd been waiting for years. In September 1988, Bigelow showed up in a different wrestling company, Jim Crockett Promotions, which was about to change its name to World Championship Wrestling. His manager, Oliver Humperdinck, came with him to the new company. Bigelow quickly jumped into action by starting a fight with one of wrestling's most famous groups, the Four Horsemen. This led to a huge opportunity in November 1988, when he got to wrestle the group's leader, Ric Flair, for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. The match happened at the Charlotte Coliseum, though it wasn't shown on TV. Even though Bigelow fought hard, he couldn't beat Flair for the title. In 1990, Bigelow's wrestling career took a different turn. Instead of appearing on major TV shows, he mostly wrestled at smaller local events called house shows. When he did show up on TV, it was usually on less important shows like NWA Power Hour and NWA Main Event. Things got more interesting when Bigelow joined forces with a scary group of wrestlers called the Sullivan Slaughterhouse. The group was led by Kevin Sullivan and included the Wild Cactus Jack. These three made a fearsome team, known for their rough and violent style of wrestling. Their biggest moment as a team came in May 1990 at a big event called Capital Combat. Bigelow, Sullivan, and Cactus Jack teamed up for an important match against two very different opponents, Norman the Lunatic and the powerful Road Warriors. Despite the Sullivan Slaughterhouse's reputation for violence, they couldn't overcome their opponents that night. Norman the Lunatic and the Road Warriors won the match, dealing a big blow to Bigelow and his partners. In 1992, Bigelow's career path led him to Mexico, where he joined a company called the Universal Wrestling Association. His time there was mostly spent in six-man tag team matches, a very popular style of wrestling in Mexico. What made this period interesting was that he often teamed up with Andre the Giant. This was surprising because just 4 years earlier, Andre had beaten him up for real in that rough match at Madison Square Garden. But now they had put their bad blood behind them and worked together as partners. Later that year, in October 1992, Bigelow made his way back to the World Wrestling Federation. The company welcomed him back by letting him win many matches. These wins helped rebuild him as a powerful force in wrestling. The biggest moment of his comeback came in January 1993 at the Royal Rumble. There, he faced off against the Big Boss Man, a former prison guard turned wrestler known for his strength and toughness. Bigelow proved he was back in top form by defeating Big Boss Man in a convincing way. This victory showed everyone that Bam Bam Bigelow was ready to be a major player in the WWF once again. On June 13th at the King of the Ring event, Bigelow showed his fighting spirit. He started strong by beating the tough Jim Duggan in the first round of the tournament. Lucky for him, he got to skip the next round because of a bye. But when he reached the final match, he had to face one of wrestling's greatest technicians, Bret Hart. Even though this was Bigelow's third time in a main event on a big show, he couldn't overcome Hart's skilled wrestling style and lost the match. Over the next year, Bigelow found himself mixed up in many different wrestling stories. One of the biggest moments came when he helped the massive champion Yokozuna keep his World Heavyweight Championship. During Yokozuna's match against the mysterious Undertaker, Bigelow was part of a group of heel wrestlers who jumped in and attacked the Undertaker. Thanks to this interference, Yokozuna managed to stay champion. This showed that Bigelow had fully embraced his role as one of the WWF top monsters. The storyline with Yokozuna proved that WWF trusted Bigelow to play important parts in their biggest stories. Even though he wasn't the champion himself, being involved in championship matches showed how valuable he had become to the company. working with major stars like Yokozuna and The Undertaker, put Bigelow right in the middle of the company's most important feuds. In a surprising moment on Monday Night Raw, on June 27, 1994, Bigelow ended his partnership with Luna Vachon. The wrestling world didn't have to wait long to find out what would happen next. Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, announced he had bought Bigelow's contract. This meant Bigelow was now part of DiBiase's new group, the $1 Million Corporation. The $1 Million Corporation was a collection of wrestlers under DiBiase's control. This new role changed things for Bigelow, turning him into one of the group's most powerful members. Instead of working alone, he now had powerful friends to help him in his matches. This move turned out to be good for Bigelow. At the big Survivor Series event that year, he led his $1 Million team to victory against a team called Guts and Glory. This win proved that joining DiBiase's group had put Bigelow back on the path to success. Having the rich and influential DiBiase in his corner opened up new opportunities for Bigelow to shine in important matches. The WWF had big plans to make their biggest show of the year, WrestleMania 11, even more special. They reached out to Lawrence Taylor, a famous football player who had been an all-pro linebacker for the New York Giants. When Taylor said yes to wrestling a match, they picked Bigelow to be his opponent. This was huge. Bigelow would get to fight a real sports superstar. The story started at the Royal Rumble event where Taylor was watching the matches from a seat near the ring. That night, Bigelow lost a match to a much smaller wrestler called the 1-2-3 Kid. When Bigelow saw Taylor laughing at his loss, he got very angry. His pride hurt. Bigelow stomped over to where Taylor was sitting. Taylor tried to be nice and offered to shake hands, but Bigelow wasn't having any of it. Instead, he shoved the football star to the ground right in front of everyone. This shocking moment got everyone talking. A professional wrestler had just put his hands on one of football's biggest stars. The WWF knew this would grab headlines and get more people interested in seeing what would happen next. By having Bigelow attack Taylor, they had created the perfect reason for these two powerful athletes to face each other at WrestleMania. After shoving Taylor, Bigelow faced quick punishment on the next Monday Night Raw when he got suspended. But even when Vince McMahon tried to get him to say sorry in an interview, Bigelow stood his ground. Instead of apologizing, he challenged Taylor to fight him anytime and anywhere. This showed everyone how serious Bigelow was about proving himself against the football star. Taylor didn't want to fight at first, staying away from wrestling and focusing on his football career. But Bigelow wouldn't leave him alone, throwing insults at him every chance he got. Finally, on February 27, 1995, at a big press conference for WrestleMania 11, Taylor had enough. After listening to more of Bigelow's trash talk, he accepted the challenge to fight. The big match happened on April 2, 1995, in the main event of WrestleMania 11. Even though Bigelow lost to Taylor, the match was a huge success. Major sports media like Sports Illustrated, ESPN SportsCenter, and USA Today all covered the story. This was exactly what WWF wanted. Their wrestling show was getting attention from mainstream sports fans. What made the match really special was how well Bigelow performed. Wrestling insiders praised him for helping Taylor, who had never wrestled before, look good in the ring. Bigelow knew exactly how to work with Taylor's football skills and hide his lack of wrestling experience. This showed that Bigelow wasn't just a great wrestler. He was also smart enough to make an inexperienced opponent look like a real challenger. In late 1995, Bigelow started feeling unhappy with how things were going in the WWF. He didn't like the way Vince McMahon was running things or where the company was heading. His last match happened on November 19, 1995, at the Survivor Series event. That night, he lost to a mysterious new wrestler called Goldust, who had just started appearing in WWF shows. After leaving WWF, Bigelow spent the next decade moving between different wrestling companies. He showed up in World Championship Wrestling and the more hardcore-style ECW. Even though he kept wrestling, his star power wasn't what it used to be. The days of main eventing WrestleMania and fighting football stars were behind him. Year after year, Bigelow's career slowly went downhill. Despite being one of wrestling's most talented big men who could move like someone half his size, he never again reached the heights he had achieved in WWF. The man who once headlined major shows and grabbed mainstream sports headlines found himself wrestling in smaller venues for less money, showing how quickly fortunes can change in professional wrestling. During this time, a hidden battle was taking over Bigelow's life. He was fighting a serious addiction to OxyContin, a powerful prescription painkiller. Like many wrestlers who dealt with years of injuries, he had started taking pain medication to keep performing. But the medicine that was supposed to help him ended up becoming a major problem. His health got so bad that he couldn't work anymore and had to rely on Social Security disability benefits to survive. His body was breaking down with atherosclerosis, a condition where his arteries got harder and narrower. He also developed diabetes and fought ongoing infections that his body struggled to beat. His back, which had taken countless bumps in the wrestling ring over the years, was in terrible shape. He needed several surgeries to try to fix it, but these operations took their toll. The once towering Bigelow even lost 2 inches of height because of all his back problems. The combination of his addiction and health issues showed how the physical demands of professional wrestling could destroy someone's body and life long after they left the ring. The sad end came on January 19, 2007. Bigelow's girlfriend found him dead in their home in Hudson, Florida. He was only 45 years old. When doctors looked into why he died, they found a deadly mix of drugs in his system, cocaine and benzodiazepines at fatal levels. His heart problems from atherosclerosis also played a part. The medical examiner in Pasco Pinellas County ruled that his death was an accident, not suicide. This tragic ending was perhaps the final chapter in a life marked by both tremendous success and serious struggles. Despite his great talent in the ring, Bigelow's troubled past created problems that followed him throughout his life. His criminal record was serious. The charges included attempted kidnapping, sexual assault, and a particularly concerning incident of reckless driving that put a child in danger. These weren't minor offenses, and they likely made WWE hesitant about celebrating him publicly. Beyond his legal troubles, Bigelow wasn't afraid to speak his mind about wrestling's dark side. He openly talked about 2 subjects wrestling companies usually want to keep quiet: backstage politics and the industry's drug problems. He shared stories about how wrestlers would fight for positions, how some got pushed ahead of others because of politics, and the widespread use of drugs among wrestlers to deal with pain and maintain their schedules. By speaking openly about these sensitive topics, Bigelow might have made himself an uncomfortable choice for the Hall of Fame. Next up, the British Bulldog. The British Bulldog was one of the most athletic powerhouses in wrestling. He went from being a young prodigy in England to becoming WWE's proud European hero, creating an unforgettable moment when he defeated Bret Hart for the Intercontinental Championship. At a time when bigger meant better, Davey Boy Smith pushed his body to dangerous limits, building his superhuman physique through whatever means necessary. And in 2002, at just 39 years old, the Bulldog's heart would give out from years of abuse. In 1962, David Smith was born in a working-class corner of Lancashire, England. He would transform from a boy watching wrestling on his family's modest television set into one of Britain's most formidable ring warriors, though the path there wasn't what most fans believe. Growing up in Goulburn, Lancashire, where luxury was scarce but dreams were abundant, young David found his escape in the electrifying world of professional wrestling. Huddled around the television with his siblings Terrence, Joanne, and Tracy, he'd watch in awe as larger-than-life characters like Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks battled their opponents. These moments planted the seeds of his future, though none could have predicted just how far they'd grow. At just 15 years old, Smith's passion couldn't be contained any longer. He stepped into the training ring, where something remarkable became immediately apparent. This teenager possessed an almost supernatural aptitude for the sport. His raw talent was so impressive that it caught the attention of producers at ITV's World of Sport, Britain's premier wrestling showcase. In an era when breaking into television, wrestling was about as likely as winning the lottery, Smith had done it before he could even legally drive. A young star was rising in British wrestling, and all eyes were on the prodigy from Lancashire. Smith's natural talent translated into an explosive presence both as a singles competitor and in tag team action. In the singles ranks, His ascent was meteoric, coming within a heartbeat of capturing the prestigious British welterweight championship while still a teenager. But it was his partnership with cousin Tom Billington that would change wrestling history. Billington, who carved out his own fearsome reputation as the Dynamite Kid, formed an alliance with Smith that caught the attention of a crucial visitor from across the Atlantic. Bruce Hart, son of legendary promoter Stu Hart, was scouring the UK for fresh talent when he witnessed the raw power and agility of these two British phenoms. The opportunity Hart presented was too tempting to ignore. A chance to wrestle for the renowned Stampede wrestling promotion in Calgary, Canada. In an era when breaking into North American wrestling was the dream of every European grappler, Smith and Billington had their golden ticket. What they couldn't know was that this move would set them on a path to revolutionize tag team wrestling forever. The infamous Hart Dungeon awaited in Calgary, a proving ground that had forged some of wrestling's greatest talents through pain and perseverance. For Smith and Billington, their British Commonwealth citizenship opened the door to this temple of technical wrestling. But what happened inside would test their limits in ways they never imagined. Under the watchful eye of Stu Hart, a man whose reputation for turning wrestlers into legitimate tough guys was known worldwide, the two Brits endured daily torture sessions that would make ordinary men quit. The dungeon's concrete floor and low ceiling became their classroom, with every submission hold, every stretch, and every grunt of pain molding them into something far beyond their early promise. But it was what happened after their graduation from this brutal finishing school that truly set the stage for greatness. In a twist of fate that would elevate both men's careers, the cousins found themselves on opposite sides of the ring. Their feud captivated Calgary audiences, showcasing their newfound technical prowess and intensity. The program reached its climax when Smith emerged victorious, claiming the prestigious Stampede British Commonwealth Mid-Heavyweight Championship, a title that carried significant weight in the territory's hierarchy. The victory wasn't just about the gold around Smith's waist. It was proof that the dungeon's baptism by fire had transformed these raw talents into polished gems. Every submission learned under Stu's tutelage, every grueling training session, had contributed to creating wrestlers who could not only survive in the demanding world of professional wrestling, but thrive in it. A fateful tour to Japan would add another deadly dimension to Smith's arsenal, the hard-hitting strong style that would later become his signature. But it was the reformation of his partnership with the Dynamite Kid that would change wrestling history. Now calling themselves the British Bulldogs, they terrorized rings across 2 continents, leaving a trail of broken opponents and stolen shows in their wake. Their reputation grew so large it couldn't be contained in Canada or Japan. In 1984, as Vince McMahon was executing his master plan for national expansion, he knew he needed the most explosive talent available. The British Bulldogs were at the top of his list. When McMahon acquired Stampede Wrestling that same year, the Bulldogs signing with WWF wasn't just another contract. It was a statement of intent. Inside the squared circle, they were poetry in motion, a perfect fusion of styles that few teams could match. The Dynamite Kid was a human highlight reel, pioneering a high-flying style that defied gravity and logic in equal measure. Meanwhile, Davey Boy served as the team's powerhouse anchor, his raw strength and surprising agility creating a foundation that allowed his partner to take even greater risks. But while Smith's professional life soared, his personal life was blossoming in equally meaningful ways. Love had found him in the Hart family dynasty, leading to marriage with Diana Hart, Stu's daughter. Their union would produce 2 children, Harry and Georgia, adding new chapters to both the Hart and Smith wrestling legacies. This personal happiness seemed to fuel Smith's in-ring success, creating a period where everything in his life was clicking into place like perfectly executed moves in a championship match. They were revolutionaries who would help redefine what tag team wrestling could be, bringing a hybrid style that combined British technical wrestling, Japanese strong style, and North America. The British Bulldogs locked horns with their former Stampede stablemates, the Hart Foundation, comprised of Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Smith's brother-in-law, Bret the Hitman Hart. Their matches became instant classics, proving that even on a roster stacked with larger-than-life figures like Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, and Andre the Giant, technical wrestling excellence could steal the spotlight. But it was their feud with Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus Beefcake that would write their names in wrestling history. At WrestleMania 2, in a match that showcased the Bulldogs' unique blend of power and innovation, they captured the WWF Tag Team Championships. What followed was a 9-month reign of dominance, where their combination of Dynamite's aerial assault and Davey Boy's raw power proved unbeatable against all challengers. Their championship story would come full circle in January 1987, when the Hart Foundation finally managed to dethrone them in a match that demonstrated just how far all four men had come since their Stampede days. Though no longer champions, the Bulldogs remained a force in the tag division, engaging in memorable programs with teams like the Islanders, the Rougeau brothers, and the imposing Demolition. During this period, the Bulldogs added an unexpected element to their presentation: a real-life English bulldog named Matilda. More than just a mascot, Matilda became an integral part of their character, drawing massive cheers from crowds and adding a unique dimension to their feuds. Connection weren't mutually exclusive. Their matches during this period would influence tag team wrestling for generations to come, setting a standard for what two talented performers could achieve when given the freedom to showcase their abilities. The Dream Team's time in WWF would come to an abrupt end in 1988, driven by escalating tensions between the volatile Dynamite Kid and the Rougeau brothers backstage. Despite Billington's growing reputation as a troublemaker, Smith's loyalty to his cousin led him to follow when they departed, taking their talents to All Japan Pro Wrestling and a resurgent Stampede Wrestling. For 2 years, the Bulldogs continued crafting mat classics across the Pacific, facing off against legendary teams like the Malenkos, the Nasty Boys, and the dynamic Japanese duo of Kenta Kobashi and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi. Each match showcased why they were considered one of wrestling's most innovative partnerships, but beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Billington's personal demons were creating an increasingly toxic situation, poisoning not just their professional relationship, but their family bonds as well. The breaking point finally came when Smith made the difficult decision to forge his own path, securing the British Bulldog trademark for himself, a business move that would drive the final wedge between the cousins. October 1990 marked a pivotal moment in Smith's career as he returned to the WWF, now simply known as the British Bulldog. Gone was the tag team specialist. In his place stood a reimagined powerhouse, ready to make his mark as a singles competitor. This transformation wasn't just a change in name or presentation. It was Smith's declaration of independence, stepping out of the shadow of both his cousin and their celebrated tag team legacy. The split would prove prophetic. While Smith was about to enter the most successful phase of his career, Billington's path would take a darker turn, illustrating how two men who once moved in perfect synchronization could end up on such drastically different trajectories. From his first singles match, the British Bulldog unleashed a new intensity in WWF, demolishing opponents like the Warlord, Haku, and even the technically superior Mr. Perfect. His combination of raw power and surprising agility quickly won over crowds, but nowhere was his popularity more explosive than in his native United Kingdom. As WWF's American attendance began to soften, they discovered a goldmine in British wrestling fans who had found their new hero. Capitalizing on this phenomenon, WWF ventured to British soil with groundbreaking shows like UK Rampage and Battle Royal at the Albert Hall. Each appearance by Smith felt like a homecoming, with his victory over the Berserker at Rampage and his triumph in the Albert Hall Battle Royal sending crowds into a frenzy. These successes were just a prelude to what would become one of wrestling's most memorable moments. In 1992, WWF made a historic decision. SummerSlam, Vince McMahon arranged for the British Bulldog to challenge his brother-in-law, Bret the Hitman Hart, for the prestigious Intercontinental Championship. The anticipation was electric. Wembley Stadium swelled with 80,000 passionate fans, the largest legitimate crowd WWF had ever drawn at that point. But this wasn't just about numbers. It was about a perfect storm of circumstances. A hometown hero, a family rivalry, a prestigious title, and the biggest stage British wrestling had ever seen. The match that would follow wouldn't just meet expectations, it would exceed them in ways nobody could have predicted. The tension between these brothers-in-law, both products of the Hart Dungeon, had been building for months. Each man knew the other's moves intimately. Hart with his technical precision, Bulldog with his explosive power. As they prepared to step through the curtain at Wembley, both men knew this wasn't just another match. It was a chance to make history. Behind the glittering lights of Wembley Stadium lurked a darker reality. In the days leading up to the biggest match of his career, Smith spiraled into a drug-fueled binge with Jim Neidhart that left him unable to remember the planned sequence of events. The demons that had haunted his former partner Dynamite Kid had found their way to Smith, whose own substance abuse issues were beginning to overshadow his incredible athletic gifts. But sometimes wrestling magic happens in spite of the circumstances. Bret Hart, ever the consummate professional, orchestrated a masterpiece that night. Like a wrestling puppet master, he guided Smith through what would become one of the greatest matches in WWF history. The electricity in Wembley Stadium reached fever pitch as the two brothers-in-law wove a tale of technical brilliance, power moves, and near falls that had 80,000 fans holding their breath with every count. When Smith finally secured the victory and the Intercontinental Championship, the image of him celebrating with his sister Diana and a tearful Bret became an iconic moment in wrestling history. But sometimes the brightest flames burn fastest. Instead of launching Smith to superstardom, his championship reign fizzled. The same issues that had nearly derailed his Wembley performance continued to haunt him. By November, he would drop the title to a rising Shawn Michaels, but worse was to come. In a devastating turn of events, WWF was forced to release Smith after he was caught receiving shipments of human growth hormone in the mail, a scandal that threatened to end his career just as it was reaching new heights. The fall from Wembley's heights to unemployment was a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes could change in professional wrestling, especially when personal demons entered the ring alongside the athletes. Just as Smith hit rock bottom, a turn of events would force him to reinvent himself once again. In the midst of Vince McMahon's highly publicized steroid trial, WWF couldn't risk any further scandals, leaving their former champion to seek opportunities elsewhere. His journey would take him through the indies of Eastern Championship Wrestling and back to the familiar rings of All Japan before landing in World Championship Wrestling in 1993. In WCW, Smith found himself aligned with the franchise player Sting, a partnership that seemed to promise great things. His powerhouse style matched up perfectly against monsters like Sid Vicious and Big Van Vader, with one match against the latter even appearing to crown Smith as the new WCW World Champion. But in classic wrestling politics fashion, a Dusty finish, named after Booker Dusty Rhodes' tendency to reverse dramatic victories, saw the title stripped away as quickly as it had been won. Just as his career seemed to be stabilizing, Smith's personal life threw another curveball. A bar fight with someone allegedly making advances toward Diana proved to be the final straw for WCW management. Once again, the British Bulldog found himself without a major platform for his talents. His next stop would be a humbling return to his roots in the UK's All-Star Wrestling, trading holds with local talents like Jimmy Ocean and Drew McDonald, a far cry from the packed stadiums and World Championship matches of just months before. This period served as a stark reminder of wrestling's volatile nature, where success could be as fleeting as a 3 count. The same explosive power and charisma that had once electrified Wembley Stadium was now being displayed in small British venues, showing just how quickly fortunes could change in the unforgiving world of professional wrestling. In the summer of 1994, an unexpected olive branch from WWF gave Smith another chance at the big time. Making his return at SummerSlam, he appeared during the explosive steel cage match between the warring Hart brothers, Bret and Owen. The Hart family drama had reached a boiling point, and Smith made his allegiance clear, standing firmly beside his brother-in-law Bret. This reunion led to a series of hard-hitting tag team matches, with the Bulldog and Hitman facing off against the unlikely alliance of Owen Hart and Jim Neidhart. As the family feud cooled, Smith's ambitions turned toward wrestling's ultimate prize, the WWF Championship. After coming up short against Bob Backlund in late 1994, he set his sights on the 1995 Royal Rumble, seeing it as his ticket to WrestleMania's main event. The night proved to be both epic and heartbreaking for Smith. Entering at number 2, he demonstrated incredible endurance by lasting until the very end, only to have his dreams shattered when #1 entrant Shawn Michaels eliminated him last. With his world title aspirations temporarily derailed, WWF Creative had a unique idea to keep Smith in the spotlight. They paired him with the All-American Lex Luger to form the Allied Powers, a team meant to symbolize the unity between Britain and America. The concept seemed promising on paper, two of wrestling's strongest powerhouses joining forces to dominate the tag team division. This new direction marked yet another reinvention for Smith, showing his adaptability in an ever-changing wrestling landscape. The Allied Powers represented more than just another tag team. It was an attempt to capitalize on both men's popularity in their respective home countries while giving them a fresh direction after their individual main event pursuits had stalled. In what should have been a dominant force, the Allied Powers never quite found their footing in WWF's tag team ranks. Their pay-per-view appearances were limited to a victory over the Blue Brothers at WrestleMania and a failed bid to capture the tag team championships from Owen Hart and Yokozuna at In Your House 2. The partnership crumbled when Luger abruptly departed for WCW, leaving Smith to navigate the waters alone once again. His singles career hit a series of frustrating roadblocks, falling short against Diesel at In Your House 4 and his brother-in-law Brett at In Your House 5. With momentum stalling, Smith made a shocking decision, aligning himself with Jim Cornette's stable alongside Owen Hart. While the group boasted imposing figures like Yokozuna and Vader, it was the partnership between Smith and Owen that truly shined, their natural chemistry and family connection creating tag team magic. Yet Smith's hunger for singles glory never dimmed. May 1996's In Your House. Beware of Dog saw him push Shawn Michaels to the limit in a WWF Championship match that ended in a controversial draw. The inconclusive finish led to a rematch at King of the Ring, the same historic night that gave birth to Austin 3:16. But even on this pivotal evening in wrestling history, Smith's quest for the company's top prize would end in disappointment. These setbacks painted a portrait of a wrestler who could consistently reach the summit but never quite plant his flag at the absolute peak. The British Bulldog's ability to seamlessly transition between singles and tag team excellence showed his versatility, but the ultimate prize remained frustratingly out of reach. Behind the scenes, a reality was settling in. While Vince McMahon viewed Smith as a reliable main event player, he didn't see him as the guy to carry the company's top prize. Rather than let this derail him, Smith channeled his energy into tag team excellence, reuniting with Owen Hart to capture the tag team championships from the Smoking Guns in a memorable victory. The duo proved themselves worthy champions, successfully defending against powerhouse teams like the Legion of Doom and the unlikely pairing of Vader and Mankind. But 1997 would finally see McMahon reward Smith's loyalty and consistency. In February, he and Owen delivered a technical masterpiece in the tournament finals, with Smith emerging as the first ever European champion, a title that seemed tailor-made for the British powerhouse. This triumph would lead to an even bigger opportunity when Bret Hart assembled a new version of the Hart Foundation. Bringing together Bret, Owen, Jim Neidhart, Brian Pillman, and Smith, the stable revolutionized wrestling storytelling through the Canada versus America angle. This unique narrative twist saw the group play heroes in Canada and Europe while serving as villains in the United States. A nuanced approach to wrestling psychology that was years ahead of its time. The reformed Hart Foundation became one of WWF's most compelling acts, with Smith playing a crucial role in their success. This period demonstrated wrestling's ability to blur the lines between good and evil, with audience reaction determined not by traditional face-heel dynamics, but by national pride and loyalty. The Bulldogs' presence added international credibility to the stable, expanding its appeal beyond North American borders and helping create one of the most memorable storylines of the 1990s. As the Hart Foundation's popularity soared in Canada, Smith found himself riding a wave of success, successfully defending his European championship against legitimate tough guys like Ken Shamrock. However, a moment that should have been his crowning achievement turned bitter at the UK exclusive pay-per-view, One Night Only, on September 20th. In what was meant to be a touching tribute to his cancer-stricken sister Tracy at ringside, Smith was scheduled to retain his title against Shawn Michaels. But wrestling's behind-the-scenes politics would rear its ugly head. Michaels, wielding his considerable backstage influence, had the finish changed so he would emerge victorious instead. The decision left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Here was Smith, in his homeland, dedicating the match to his dying sister, only to have his moment stolen by backstage maneuvering. This incident only intensified the growing real-life animosity between HBK and the Hart family. The tension would reach its breaking point at the now infamous Survivor Series on November 9, 1997. The Montreal Screwjob didn't just change wrestling history, it shattered the Hart Foundation forever. Watching his brother-in-law Bret Hart get deceived in such a public manner, Smith made an immediate decision. Standing in solidarity with his family, he walked out of WWF alongside Bret and Jim Neidhart, making the jump to WCW. This exodus marked the end of an era. The Hart Foundation, one of wrestling's most compelling stables, was torn apart not by storyline betrayal, but by real-world business decisions. Smith's departure showed that sometimes blood and loyalty run thicker than business, even in the cutthroat world of professional wrestling. In 1998, Smith's once impressive physique had become a liability, his steroid use leaving him bloated and limited in the ring. His WCW run reflected this decline, relegated to undercard matches with Neidhart until a devastating accident in September changed everything. During a match, Smith took a brutal bump onto a concealed trapdoor, meant for Ultimate Warrior's dramatic entrance, that nobody had warned him about. The impact was catastrophic. What followed was a nightmare scenario that exposed wrestling's darker side. While Smith lay injured, Eric Bischoff fired him, believing he was exaggerating his condition. The reality was far more serious. Smith developed a spinal infection during recovery that nearly left him paralyzed. The physical pain drove him deeper into drug dependency, creating a vicious cycle that would follow him back to WWF in 1999. His return to WWF saw a stripped-down version of the British Bulldog. Gone were the iconic Union Jack tights, replaced by plain jeans. Even his signature Rule Britannia theme music was taken away. This repackaging, combined with his physical limitations and ongoing substance issues, left Smith a shadow of his former self. In an era defined by larger-than-life attitude-era personalities, he found himself losing to stars like The Rock before being demoted to the now devalued European Championship division. The transformation was jarring for longtime fans. The same wrestler who had once electrified Wembley Stadium was now struggling to keep up with the faster-paced style of the late 90s. His body, battered by years of abuse both in and out of the ring, simply couldn't deliver the power moves that had once made him special. This period served as a stark reminder of wrestling's physical toll and the dangerous spiral that could occur when injuries and addiction intersected. After years of setbacks, Smith managed one final moment of glory, capturing his old European Championship from D'Lo Brown on SmackDown in October 1999. But this victory was merely a brief flicker of his former brilliance. He drifted into the chaotic hardcore division, his once precise power moves replaced by brawling and weapon shots, until WWF was forced to release him in May 2000 after he arrived at an event clearly unfit to perform. As his professional life crumbled, his personal world shattered alongside it. His marriage to Diana Hart disintegrated amid shocking rumors of infidelity involving top WWF stars Shawn Michaels and Steve Austin. The divorce in 2000 marked the end of his connection to the legendary Hart family that had given him both his greatest triumphs and deepest sorrows, to battle his dependency on prescription painkillers, an addiction that had spiraled out of control following his 1998 back injury. A disturbing arrest for allegedly threatening Diana and her sister Ellie served as his wake-up call. With remarkable determination, Smith committed to getting clean, purging all medications from his system. Just as it seemed Smith had conquered his personal battles and was preparing for one last WWE run, tragedy struck. On May 18, 2002, while vacationing in British Columbia with his girlfriend, the British Bulldog suffered a fatal heart attack at just 39 years old. Though he had achieved sobriety, years of substance abuse had taken their toll. In 2020, WWE finally recognized his contributions with a Hall of Fame induction. Next up, Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect is the greatest technical wrestler to ever step in the ring. He captured championships in every major territory, mastered moves no one else could execute, and even became wrestling's first true perfectionist who could excel at any sport he touched. But in 2003, one decision would change everything. And it didn't just end Mr. Perfect's career, it tragically ended his life. In 1958, Curt Hennig was born in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. He was the son of Larry the Axe Hennig, one of the most respected wrestlers in the business, soaking up knowledge that would serve him well in the years to come. Wrestling wasn't just something he watched on TV, it was his family's way of life. Growing up, Curt showed early signs that he was something special. In high school, he could do it all. Football teams wanted him, basketball coaches tried to recruit him, and he made everything look easy. But despite all these offers coming his way, Curt knew exactly what he wanted to do with his life. Just like his father before him, the wrestling ring was calling his name. When Curt started training with wrestling legend Verne Gagne, something became clear right away. Curt was a natural in the ring. While most new wrestlers needed months of practice, Curt picked everything up instantly, like he'd been doing it his whole life. Starting out in the AWA in 1980, Curt felt a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Everyone kept comparing him to his dad, Larry the Axe Hennig, one of the toughest wrestlers around. For a young guy just starting out, those were some big boots to fill. That's why in 1981, Curt jumped at the chance to work for Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation. The run didn't last long though, as his wife was about to have their first baby. But in that short time, he caught McMahon's eye as someone special. Going back to the AWA turned out to be a smart move. Curt teamed up with a young Scott Hall, and together, they won the tag team titles. They would end up being one of the last great teams in AWA history. But it was when Curt started wrestling on his own that things really took off. In 1987, he hit the biggest moment of his career so far, beating the legendary Nick Bockwinkel to become AWA World Champion. This was huge not just for Curt, but for the whole Hennig family, as even his dad Curt had finally stepped out of his father's shadow. He held that title for over a year, but by the late 1980s, the AWA was in trouble. The company that had been around for decades was starting to fall apart. Lucky for Curt, though, Vince McMahon hadn't forgotten about the talented young wrestler he'd seen years before. As the AWA was heading toward its end, McMahon came calling with an offer that would change everything. When Curt walked back into the WWF in 1988, Vince McMahon could hardly believe how much he'd grown. The young kid who'd briefly worked for him years before had turned into a complete performer. Everyone needed a character, something that would make them stand out from the crowd. That's how Mr. Perfect was born. Looking at Curt's background as a natural athlete who'd excelled at every sport he tried, McMahon knew they had something special on their hands. Yes, they filmed those now famous TV spots showing Mr. Perfect doing amazing things in different sports, sinking impossible basketball shots, throwing perfect spirals in football, and even bowling perfect games. While some of these needed a few takes to get right, Curt's natural ability meant he could actually do most of these feats himself. Even when he wasn't the one doing the talking, Curt found ways to steal the show. While Flair was cutting one of his famous promos, fans couldn't help but watch Perfect in the background, making faces and reactions that made everything even better. During their time working together, Curt and Rick became close friends, which wasn't surprising given Curt's personality. Behind the scenes, Curt was known as one of the most well-liked guys in the locker room. He was always ready with a joke or a prank to lighten the mood, the kind of person who could make everyone laugh even on their worst days. But while he kept everyone else smiling, Curt was fighting his own battles. His back wasn't getting any better, and he'd started relying more and more on painkillers just to get through the day. Yes, even though he wasn't taking bumps in the ring anymore, the pain from his injuries just wouldn't go away. The 1992 Survivor Series was set to feature a huge tag team match, The Ultimate Warrior and Randy Savage against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. But when Warrior suddenly quit the company right before the show, Vince McMahon found himself in a tight spot. After running through his options, each time ever he'd be playing a good guy. But just like everything else in his career, Kurt made it look easy. Fans who'd spent years hating him now found themselves cheering as he sent his old friend Ric Flair packing back to WCW in a loser leaves town match in January '93. After that, he had good feuds with rising stars like Shawn Michaels and Lex Luger. But something was different this time around. The sad truth was that Kurt just couldn't move like he used to, and both he and the fans could see it. By 1996, Vince McMahon was trying to get Mr. Perfect back in the ring one more time. The timing seemed odd, though. Kurt was about to get a $300,000 payout from his insurance deal, money he planned to use for retirement. Then, out of nowhere, Lloyd's of London refused to pay up. Kurt had his suspicions about this, thinking Vince might have pulled some strings to force him back to work. Yes, while no one ever proved if this was true or not, the whole thing left a bad taste in Kurt's mouth. Angry about the situation, Kurt reached out to Eric Bischoff over at WCW, coming to an abrupt end after what became known as the plane ride from hell. Yes, on a commercial flight back from the UK to the US, several wrestlers got out of hand, but Kurt's actions stood out even among the chaos. After having too much to drink, he got into a wrestling match with Brock Lesnar that ended up with both men crashing into the plane's emergency exit, the kind of thing that could have ended in tragedy. When the dust settled from that infamous flight, several wrestlers lost their jobs, and Kurt was among them. For the next few months, Kurt bounced around the independent wrestling scene. Showing up at CERN in 2002, Curt Hennig's story would come to a tragic end on February 10, 2003. He was supposed to wrestle at the Florida State Fair that day, part of his ongoing effort to climb back to the top of the business he loved. But at 10 p.m. in a moment that would shake the wrestling world, a hotel housekeeper made a devastating discovery: Kurt's body in his room. At just 44 years old, leaving behind a wife and 4 children who would now have to go on without their perfect dad.
I lost somebody that meant the world to me. He wasn't only my dad, he was like a brother. He was my hero.
When the Hillsborough County Medical Examiner's Office released their findings on March 26, 2003, the official cause was listed as acute cocaine intoxication. But like so many wrestling deaths of that era, the full story wasn't quite that simple. For Kurt's father, Larry "the Axe" Hennig, things just didn't add up. Speaking in the book The Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, The Heels, Larry voiced the questions that haunted him. "It's not quite clear to me yet, and perhaps it never will be," he said. "From my standpoint, it just looked like it was one of those one-night deals. Got in with the wrong people." Unlike many veterans who kept their knowledge to themselves, Kurt believed in passing on what he'd learned. Yes, following the example set by Roddy Piper before him, he took countless younger wrestlers under his wing, including future star Brock Lesnar. As Sean Waltman would later recall, Kurt saw teaching others as his duty to the business. But maybe what people remember most about Kurt was his ability to light up any room he walked into. Stone cold. Steve Austin recalled never seeing Kurt in a bad mood, while others talked about how he could turn around the atmosphere in even the most miserable locker room. Today, his legacy lives on through his son Curtis Axel, who carries the Hennig name proudly in the ring. Before every match, Curtis quietly prays to his father. While his story may have ended too soon, his legacy lives on through the countless matches he left behind, the performers he influenced, and the memories he created for fans around the world.